Assalamu alaikum and welcome to the Habibis podcast. Three game developers drinking good Arab tea. I'm your host for this week, Osama Dorias.
And I'm Fauzi Mesmor.
And I'm Rami Ismail. So, uh, I wish I had stories to tell. I wish I had lots of stories to tell. But basically, my week was this. I played Persona 5 Strikers, and I finished it. And it was exceptionally good.
Good.
You kind of wonder how they can transfer all of that charm and all of that rebelliousness and all of the sort of like tropes of a Persona game into a hack and slash, basically. They did it. Everything from the first fight to the last fight, it's all there. The plot twists, the moments that make you cheer, the moments that make you sad. It's 100% a Persona game, and I'm also entirely sure that if I think back about these games, that I won't be able to distinguish them from memory.
So, wow, that's high praise. So
Yeah,
what
it
you
is
mean to
very
tell
high
me
praise.
is that I can get to experience more Persona 5?
Yes, that's exactly it. It's just genuinely, it mapped onto. I went, after I finished it, I visited my mom yesterday and she asked about it because she'd read about it on Twitter. And she played Persona 5, right? It was her first JRPG. And she asked if she should play Strikers. And I said, well, in terms of gameplay, it's very different. It's more towards Nier Automata, which she has also played, but mixed with Persona, because, those are two games she's played and understands. And so I looked up some parts from Persona 5 because I wanted to remind my mom of what the story was. A lot of her early games, she remembers the feelings, but not the story because she was so busy playing, trying to figure out how the sticks work and how the buttons work. And it meant that for Persona 5, I looked up some story beats for her, including sort of like the central plot twist and the final boss fight. And when the combat UI came up, right, that's sort of like that beautiful UI that comes from your character. That's just very button press controlled. It's very active compared to most RPGs. When that came up, I was like, oh yeah, right, that's how it works. I had just overwritten my memories of Persona 5 with Strikers as if they were the same gameplay, because Strikers feels like the way Strikers plays the way Persona 5 makes you feel the battles are actually going, right?
The entire time you're saying that, I'm trying to think of another time where something like that happened in the game franchise, where they shifted gears completely and it felt like the same game. I suppose the Mario games kind of do that, like to a certain
Right.
extent, but it's not like they're narratively heavy. I mean, anything like Persona, I can't think of another time that something like that happened, where they cross genres and felt like the same experience. It's impressive.
It genuinely maps one to one to my memories. The characters are so sincerely the same ones. The art style is pretty much identical, like health bar, SP. The way the mechanics work. Well, I mean, I can give you one game that did it and that did it successfully. Final Fantasy VII Remake. I think it's the only other game that managed that, where Final Fantasy VII and Final Fantasy VII Remake are two completely different games. But if you talk about the boss fights, if you would have a conversation about, beating one of the bosses, you might not figure out that you're talking about two different games because your strategy would still be very similar, right?
Yeah, that's a very good point.
I had this materia, and then I used these attacks because that's its weak point, and just try to sort of like when I got damaged, I healing a lot and making sure that my healer was okay. And you could talk about Final Fantasy VII and 7 Remake without necessarily figuring out that you're talking about two different games.
That's true.
For Persona, I think it will be very clear that you're talking about two different games, but it would still feel to whoever is playing them like the same one, and it's just shocking.
Rami, so like by the time this game came out till now, it's less than 2 weeks. So I'm starting to think that this is not Persona 5 length.
It's a good 50 hours.
Oh, okay. Oh, still a big game.
It's a big game. Yeah, no, like I said, it's genuinely Persona-esque. It's genuinely Persona-esque in how it is set up. It has a similar structure. You go into the metaverse or equivalent, and you complete things to complete the zones, and then there's story progress, and there's stuff in the real world you got to do. There's stuff in the metaverse you got to do. it genuinely feels in every way like a Persona, even though a lot of it has been streamlined, right? The social aspects are out, but even though they still have sort of like social bonding mechanics, they just turn into sort of a tech tree, and they kind of happen automatically or based on answers you're giving. But you're not picking to go hang out with Yusuke, right? You just things just happen, and those give you bond points that allow you to unlock certain tech stuff.
Okay.
It's a tour de force in terms of design. Like, I think they really started from how do we translate Persona 5 to this, right? And I don't think they started from how can we make a hack and slash game that is Persona. I think they really started from how do we make a Persona that is a hack and slash, and it really shows. It's incredibly well done.
Yeah, that's gonna be my next game, I reckon.
I can really recommend it. Let me know after, literally just after the first fight, send me a message and tell me whether you feel back at home.
Okay.
Because that you know, like that for me, that was the moment where I was convinced already. It's just like, yep, nope, this Persona. And then I was done with Persona. You know, when you're done with a game that you really love, and then there's no other game. That's what happened to me. So I looked around, and somebody I knew was talking about Loop Hero. So I downloaded Loop Hero, and I thought that would be a pretty straightforward game. That I would play it a little and then be done with it. And then 8 hours later, I was playing Loop Hero. I mean, I was still playing Loop Hero. I had not stopped playing Loop Hero. And that's 4 days ago now. Did any of you play it?
Yes, I played Loop Hero as well. I was at that weekly event, the Game Industry Gathering, and somebody was sharing their screen and they were going through the motions. And I'm like, oh, I had heard about that game. That's not what I expected the game to be. It was a lot more passive in some ways than I thought it would be. It's more like inventory management, the game. And I know that doesn't sound very sexy or anything, but it was really intriguing to me. I'm like, okay, that's something I could definitely do while listening to a podcast or watching something else. And I need a category of games that fits that. So
Can one of you guys describe that game to me? I haven't played it.
Yeah, who does the honors, Osama? Who can explain it? I can explain it better, but do you want to explain it?
Well, I'm not going to follow that. Go for it.
Okay. You'll see that Osama gives a better explanation after I do it. But okay. So basically,
After the pressure of that, now I have to judge the explanation.
Oh no,
yeah.
pressure's on.
I'll give you numbers from 1 out of 3 Habibis.
Given what happened last episode with Nuran, I feel like I have a bias against me this time. Just anti-Egyptian sentiment here.
No, I would never.
Okay, no. Okay, yeah. So it's Loop Hero is effectively a roguelike meets an idle game. There is a world that has been destroyed and everything has been forgotten except for the main character who can vaguely remember stuff. They walk around a path, and the path goes in a circle. They start at a campfire, and there's a number of slimes on the path. And the walking is automatic, and then you get to a fight, and then the fighting is automatic. You do nothing. It's this sort of charming pixel art, old school style, but it has a lot of love, and it has a lot of detail, and a lot of good effects, to be honest. And then when you beat an enemy, you might get items that you can equip, and you will get cards that you can play. And the cards you play as sort of like kind of like a real-time strategy game or a board game, right?
Yeah.
You put them on the map, and then the map takes what that card is. And those cards affect the path that you walk over or the environment that you walk through.
You know, there are a lot of board games that are tile-based where you're building the board as you play. It kind of feels like that, where you're
Right.
like kind of going over some tiles with new tiles, or you're building the Beyond map as well.
Right. And then the interesting thing is that those changes to the path will change what enemies you come across, or what items you come across, or what quests you might find, or tons of other effects that you could come across. And they also interact with each other in interesting ways. You can, for example, put a grove on the path, and then you have a forest that might spawn a rat once every X amount of time. And then you have to fight the rat when you come across it, right? And that gives you experience, it gives you items, it gives you cards. But if you put a blood grove next to the forest, which you can only place next to the forest, then any enemies within range of that blood grove will die if they have under 15%. But if you put two blood groves near each other or they overlap, then the player itself might also get hurt by the blood grove. So now you're thinking about all these different layers of where am I going to build these things, right? How would they be useful? And the final balancing act is every loop you get healed a little, but you only get to keep all of your stuff if you quit at the camp where you started. If you die before that, you lose a large part of everything you've gathered.
You keep like 30% or something like that.
Right. And then on top of that, there's one more balancing act, which is as you build stuff, you're remembering more of the world effectively. And if you remember enough of the world, a boss fight will show up that is sort of like the end of that level. So you want to build fast enough that you gain enough experience every time you loop, and enough items and enough cards. Every time you loop, the enemies get stronger. If you go too fast building stuff, the boss will show up before you're ready. If you go too slow building stuff, you won't make it to the boss without being super injured. So it's basically just like risk reward, the video game, I think, but then mixed with sort of like a nice aesthetic of, I want to build a very pretty world, because that's what I'm doing 90% of the time. I'm like, oh, this mountain it should be there, but it's not pretty there. I think I should put it somewhere else. I think that's how I'm playing it most of the time.
I think that's an excellent explanation. One of the interesting things about the game for me is it balances my normal internal sense of loss aversion in a very interesting way. Like take it back to Skyrim. I'm the guy who started playing Skyrim and filled the inventory so much that I started getting heavy and encumbered, and then now the whole time I'm just like, dancing through this line of I have to pick up something. Damn, now I have to go through my inventory and get rid of other things. Right. And like Loop Hero kind of does that for you in a way that initially I didn't like, because it went against my natural instincts. But then actually I started like adoring. I love it. So you have a limited number of inventory slots. And if you pick up an item, it just completely destroys whatever you had in your hand in that slot before. So if you pick up a new axe, your sword is gone. You're picking it up from your inventory, and your inventory has a limited number of slots. So if you keep getting more weapons, items, shields, whatever, anything, the older things that you have just disappear. They just go away.
Right. First in, first out.
Exactly. So at the beginning, I'm like, no, what? Like, I want to sell them. I want to benefit from them somehow, but they're crap. And like that, there's no real benefit to having them either. And just after a while, it felt cathartic. I'm like, okay, I'm just working through this. And,
did you notice that actually gives you stuff?
If what gives you stuff? Sorry?
When something gets destroyed, it gives you stuff?
I didn't notice. What does it give you?
When you overflow inventory, it gives you a resource. When you overflow land cards, it also gives you stuff.
Well, I didn't play it for 8 hours, so maybe give me a couple of more hours to figure that out.
There's so many mechanics.
Wow.
It's really interesting. There's, for example, there's a mechanic if there's a goblin camp, which spawns if you have 2 villages, I think. If there's a goblin camp and you destroy it with a Oblivion card or something, while there's a goblin on it, it will spawn a magical ooze that you can kill.
Oh, that's
right?
Really cool.
It's just full of interesting, like, if this, then that. It's like layers upon layers upon layers. There's so much discovery that I don't want to spoil too much for people, right? I don't want to talk too much about it. But for me, I think that's the most interesting thing. You play a card and you're like, oh, this is going to be smart. And then there's like this unexpected side effect. Like building too many mountains close to each other will turn it into a peak, which will give you a lot of stuff. But now suddenly a secret enemy starts spawning and you're like,
I discovered that one. I didn't know, because that's the thing. There's no hand holding really. The game just throws you in there and gives you all these tiles, and you're like, I guess I'll put this here. Oh, this has an area of effect. I shouldn't have put it there. Next time, I guess I'll put it, somewhere else. And you're learning that as you go. You hover over things to see what stats they give, and then you're piecing it together in your head. There's no tutorial pop up that just explains you all the things in its detail, and you're trying to understand it. It gives you the chance to learn that on your own.
But Osama, Did you also agree that the way they're doing progression is really smart with sort of like the camp and like the
Yeah,
resources?
absolutely.
Because no run feels like a loss. Even if you get wrecked, you're still getting 30% of your stuff, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
You feel like, I mean, if you lose, you're kind of a little bit pissed anyway,
Right.
but not enough. Like you're gonna take something home. No, I totally agree
Right.
with that.
Yeah, I'm very impressed with the progression design in the game, and I'm very impressed with the sort of like conditional like cards, like the way they interact, the way they work together, the way the game gives you like a very clear sense of like risk reward, right? Like every time you pass the campfire, you basically have to make a calculation of like, am I gonna get that far once more? Um, it's probably the clearest way I've seen risk reward distilled into a roguelike, to be honest. I've seen lots of interesting ways of doing roguelike, but I've never seen this one where it's just like, no, this is you've created this problem for yourself entirely. This is the risk, this is the result of the risk reward choices you made earlier. Are you going to roll the dice one more time? Everything you do builds more risk, builds more reward, and it can backfire in spectacular ways, but then it still gives you this super segmented, super easy to oversee way of thinking about the risk. It's like that talk by I don't know who it was. Was it Zach? It might have been Zach Gage about how randomness in people's brain is inherently broken,
Yeah.
and how people don't understand randomness. That if you say there's a 10% drop chance for an item with a boss, that people expect it to drop within 10 times,
Yes.
even though that's not at all how 10% works.
And if there's 95% chance of something happening, you expect it to happen 100% of the time. You
Right.
rage that one time it doesn't.
Right. But he explained too that when you display chance as dice, that people instantly get it. So if you say instead of X%, you say roll 2 6s. That's effectively the same thing, right? Like,
Yeah.
but people understand when you say roll 2 6s, even though they don't understand the equivalent percentage to that. I think that's fascinating. I think Loop Hero uses a very similar trick where it's a very visual sort of like, okay, going from A to B, these are the enemies in my way. This is the risk reward, right? I will get this many items. I have a chance of grabbing up a thing over here. And then when I get back to the campfire, if I get back to the campfire, this and this will have happened. And it's just this very easy to oversee system, but it really changes how the game works, opposed to other roguelikes, where it's very much like, okay, the next level is this question mark, right? I know Slay the Spire sort of played with it, with like getting to oversee what the world is going to, but this feels like an endpoint for that sort of like direction of design for now. It's very interesting. Fauzi, who did better? I just want to know. We've just been going for so long. At this point, I'm just nervous. Just give us a score.
You've been doing a bunch of the explanation, but Osama jumped in with a bunch of key assists. So hard to give the score to either.
Thank you. It's okay. You know what? I'll concede this one to Rami.
You're all winners in my eyes.
When I was getting ready to explain this, I had like a list of things that I wanted to talk about, and I was checking them off as Rami was mentioning them, and he had a few others. So I'll happily concede this one to Rami. But next time we both play a game, I want to go first.
Okay, deal. Deal.
The game seems to be doing pretty good, though. I saw it's featured on Steam.
It's featured on everything. I think it's featured on my Twitter for sure.
It took me by surprise. To be honest, I looked at a couple of screenshots before. I saw a few people talk about it on Twitter before, and was like, "Oh, doesn't look like it's for me." Then when I saw it in action, I was super intrigued.
Where are you guys playing it?
Steam,
both. Yeah.
Like you have to understand. If I say I'm playing a game on Steam, that means something. I don't play games on PC unless I really have no option and I really want to play them.
Mm-hmm.
Loop Hero is, I think, only on PC at the moment.
Yeah.
So for me, it's really like, okay, I guess I'll have to play this on Steam.
I was planning on playing Persona Strikers on Steam, actually, which was also a surprise for me that was released there too.
Right. Yeah. It's also on Switch.
Yeah. But the thing, like, I played Age of Calamity on Switch, and like the console kind of struggles with a lot of stuff on screen at the same time. Like the frame rate dropped a bit, so that's why I was like, maybe I'll just play this on Steam.
Yeah, I'm
Okay.
waiting for the new rumored Switch to be not rumored anymore and see if I can replay some of these games. Because yeah, once you jump to next gen, it's really kind of hard to go back to bad frame rates. It's worth it for some games, but
That's why, like, I already packed my PS4 away, so that's why I'm going. Like, I'll just play this on Steam instead. But this week I didn't play much video. Like, I played video games, but I played Assassin's Creed Valhalla, and we spoke about this at length last week, so I don't want to talk too much about that.
Mhm.
The game I want to talk about is not actually a video game; it's a board game.
Oh.
It's an ancient board game. It's called shogi. I don't know if you.
Oh, okay.
I
Yeah,
know.
yeah.
I know that both of you guys are like super into chess,
yes.
Mhm.
right? Like, both of you were like in chess club at school or something of the sort, if I remember correctly.
Yes, I used
Right.
to organize chess tournaments a long time ago.
I used to win chess tournaments a long time ago.
I never won a chess tournament.
All right. So, side note, maybe we should have a stream of some sort of you guys playing chess.
Oh,
You
I'd
know-
be up for that.
Fine,
me-
I'll organize it, and Rami can beat me.
And I'll be the shout screamer. Shout screamer.
You would be the judge again.
Yeah, the judge. And I like how, like,
love
instead
it.
of saying shout caster, I just said shout screamer.
We should call it Habibis Gambit.
I can just imagine. Fauzi there. And what are they doing? They're going for lunch. I think they're going for lunch. I love
They
the
go for lunch. And they throw the.
poutine. I want poutine. Bring me a poutine as
I
well.
love it.
I would love me some poutine right now. as well.
Oh, just come to Montreal. I'll take you to all the best places. You're gonna gain £5 before you leave.
So, can I have poutine for dessert after that Iraqi kebab?
You don't understand, Fauzi. This is like asking if you can have like a kamela of poutine. Like there's some things you don't do. You don't eat more poutine after poutine. Believe me, it's like
You can't.
it's like koshari. It's genuinely like these Montreal people. They're the Quebecois. They've managed to create koshari in a different way. Just instead of carbs on carbs and carbs, it's just fat on fat on fat.
That sounds very exciting for me.
You're gonna love it.
So there was a lot of reasons for me to go to Canada right now.
Mhm.
Anyway, so we'll make the chess thing happen. I'm very excited about this idea. but basically, since you guys both like chess, I think you might appreciate this game, which is why I wanted to talk about it, because I think the rules of this game is kind of fascinating. Shogi is traditional Japanese chess. And it's once I started to learn the rules, it is in fact the Dark Souls of chess. The game starts. So there's the general kind of it's a grid-based game, turn-based, sets of pieces on a board. You both have a king. Once the king is in checkmate, the game is over. Right. So it has that in common. But it's a 9x9 board. You have 3 rows of pieces each. And there's also like a lot of similar roles to chess, in which like you take turns in like moving the pieces. Every piece has its own unique set of ways to move, like chess as well. Once you get the piece to the last 3 lines of your opponents, you can promote that piece. You promote the piece by flipping it to the other side. It will show the character, the kanji, but in red. And the now promoted piece has its own set of moves. So all of your pieces have their own different ways of moving, and once you promote them, they also move differently.
Right.
So that's like Dark Souls of chess. Point A. Point B.
They also have way cooler names though. Like we have like Rook, and then the isn't the because I had to learn shogi.
Yeah.
I had to learn shogi to play Yakuza.
Fair. Good reason.
And it's just like, okay, your rook is now a dragon. I'm like, wait, what?
Yes.
Okay,
Well,
I'm up. Yes, let's go.
Technically, your rook is a flying chariot.
Okay.
But it's translated to English as a rook because it makes it easier to kind of relate. But it's flying
Remember.
chariot tradition.
Right.
So flying chariot to dragon is not a big departure. But yes, it's very epic. You have a gold general, you have a silver general. There's like a whole bunch of different pieces. But this is like the most crazy rule of all. So let's say like I ate one of your pieces. So now that piece is on the side. It's on the side. It's my piece now. So at any point in my turn, instead of making a move with the piece, I can bring in a dead piece and put it on the board. as long as I'm not bringing in that piece and putting it in like specific terms. But generally, any piece I take from my opponent, I can use later.
Interesting.
You already have a lot of pieces, and as the game progressing, you're getting more and more pieces.
This is like you win this game by the Age of Empire pre-strategy.
Wait, so
Like
does it
mounting
introduce
pieces.
like a positive feedback loop, or if you start winning at the beginning, you get more pieces than your opponent, and you snowball?
It's like the pieces are made in a way that you can like as a strategically made move wouldn't matter if you have a lot of pieces. You know
I
what I
see.
mean?
Okay.
That there's still strategy, like a lot of strategy involved. But like the part that is kind of like mind twisting for me is that in chess you go like I'm gonna make this move so that my opponent makes that move, so I can make this move, so I can do this move, and then it's a check.
Mm.
This one produces like I'm gonna make this move so I can eat that piece, so he can make this other move, so I can take that piece from outside, bring it in, then move it the next turn, so I can promote it, and then I can go back and kill his piece. You know what I mean? Like it adds. The promotion happens so frequently, and bringing out pieces from the outside happens so frequently that it's also added to your thought process of what I need to do next.
Right.
That's cool.
It's
No wonder that I kept losing.
it's a fascinating. It takes a couple of hours to finish a game,
Right.
because it's just so much going on and like a lot of thinking and all of this stuff. But I've been playing it quite a bit. Initially, like started practicing a lot as part of. I think I spoke about it on the podcast before on the 51 worldwide games. And you're right, it is in Yakuza, so you can
Right.
also play it there. But before I left Japan, I was in a flea market, and they were selling the actual wooden board, which I bought, and it was in my closet for such a long time. But after playing it on 51 worldwide games, I'm like, it's time for me to crack out the board and start playing it, only to discover that it was just the board and none of the pieces. It didn't come with the pieces.
Perfect.
But it
no.
happens when you buy stuff from a flea market, I guess. So now I'm trying to
Right.
look at buying pieces from Amazon or something, and they're like 300 euros or something like.
Oh my god.
Yeah,
Wow.
they're very expensive. So I need to
Wow.
find me like a friend who's a wood maker or something, so they could make me
Or
the
like 3D
pieces.
print them. Like I don't know.
Plastic? Are you kidding me or something?
I have a friend who can laser engrave wood if you want. I can
Ooh.
ask him.
Oh, that's pretty cool. Like it's okay.
Yeah.
Nice.
Custom-made shogi pieces. I wonder if that's
Right.
gonna be like cheaper than buying the 300 euros off Amazon or not.
Probably would be. You should make. You should have them made in Arabic then or
That-
something.
it will help because
you-
like if somebody's like playing with me and they can't speak Japanese because the characters,
Right,
the pieces have the characters on them, so that even
Right.
makes it a little bit less accessible. But
Right.
it's so funny,
Yeah.
like because like in Japanese flea markets and whatever you're buying, like even like it's a dude with like just a cloth on the street and they're selling stuff. Every piece is like has a like tiny description of what the piece is, and I probably just didn't bother to read that it's just a board without the stuff in it.
Right.
And every item on that cloth has a price on it.
You know how he.
So like
A price?
so like it has a price tag, like what like same as you find in the supermarket, but this is like a dude selling stuff in the street. So and I just go in and buy the thing and just give him the money. And for me,
Wow.
like my Arab mind kind of broke when I bought that. when I was like buying that shogi board, I was like, I read the price and it says like 1,000 yen or something like that. I'm like, I'll give you 50. And the dude, and the dude was like, what is this that you're trying to do here?
Right.
The concept of haggling is such like an alien concept to them that I
Right.
think the dude generally was shocked.
Right. Yeah. Sir, can you read, sir?
Yeah.
I mean, but in a zoo, like if you go to any bazaar, in at least any bazaar that I've been to in the Arab world, there's no prices.
Oh
Yeah.
no.
Why would you put prices on there? That
No.
seems like a terrible idea.
Because like the shop owner is going like, I could probably make the most money out of this person if they don't
Right,
haggle
yes.
enough.
If there's an Arab, they're gonna haggle, so the price is a price is irrelevant. And if it's a tourist, you want to see how much you could ask from them before they stop saying I don't want it anymore.
And it's exactly like the techniques that I used in haggling that I applied
Right.
and I'm buying that shogi. So like when I go to any bazaar or like market in the Arab world, and like the person like I ask, so like you definitely have to look uninterested in anything you want to buy. So
Yes.
I look at the thing, go like, yeah, I don't really want this, but how much is it? And then
Right.
the person is gonna like say a price. Let's say like I don't know, $20 or $100 or something like that. They're gonna say like an outrageous price, to which
Right.
I should react that way, even if I thought that the price was reasonable. I go like, what? $100? Then I should proceed to counter with like the most ridiculously low price I could think of. So like
70
$100,
cents.
I'll give you 50 cents. To which the person is gonna like, either fake a heart attack or like, you want to kill me, you want my family to starve.
Yep.
I like to have some kind of like hyperbolic reaction. Go like, are you insane? No, 95. And then I go
Right.
like, all right, $2. What? 92. And then this goes on for maybe 50 minutes
Right.
until one of us is too tired
Right.
to haggle anymore.
I mean, my father always taught me the same trick, which is, Rami, if you want something, look at the thing next to it. Negotiate for that, right? Just negotiate as hard as you can for that to get the price as low as possible. And then the end go like, it's too expensive. How much is that one?
Man, that's genius.
And then you start the price at that price you've already agreed on. And then you haggle a little bit more. And then you go, okay. But my dad taught me so many tricks. And it was always so interesting because he is... The Egyptians are expert. Money works different, right?
Yeah.
Like in Europe or in North America or in a lot of Western countries, but also a lot of countries that are more structured in life. I think you have a price because we all sort of have hopefully similar amounts of resources to spend, right? But just like with traffic in the Middle East, the way the system works is born from necessity. Not everybody can pay the same thing for the same item. So if people want to be profitable but also fair, you kind of create the system where everybody pays a different thing for the same item, right? Yeah. And I think that's very interesting because my dad was a very good negotiator, right? I watched him as a kid. I would watch him, and he would go and he would talk about the wrong item, the item I didn't want, right? Was not allowed to point at things. Don't point at things. If you walk by a store and you want something, wait until we've walked by the store, then tell your father, and we'll go back in 20 minutes, right? Or we'll see if we can find it at another store, because usually those items, like we would go to Ghana Khalili, and I would see something like a souvenir. It's this incredible bazaar. I would see this souvenir that I would want, or this item that I would want, and then all these stores pretend as if they're the only ones that sell it, even though they're probably replicas. And every third store you walk by, and my dad would ask me what I would want, and I would describe it, and then he would go back. He would negotiate about the other thing, and they would go for a long time. And at some point, every time, my dad would grab his wallet. And in preparing, he had already put most of the money that was in the wallet in the back pocket of his pants, right? And he would keep exactly just a little bit more than he wanted to give to the shopkeeper, exactly a bit more than he thought was acceptable for the sale. And at some point during negotiation, he would just open his wallet, grab the money, and hold it in front of the salesman. And go like, okay, this is what I want to give you. If you want it, take it. I'll take the item. If you don't want it, khalas. We'll move on. And they would 90% of the time they would take it, and he would grab the last bill and he would go like, he would give that as well as sort of like a thank you, like it was a pleasure at the end of the sale when everything was done. He would just give it as a tip, and then I would have my item, and it would always be like, right, it would be half the price or a third of the price.
Wow, that's impressive.
But the thing is, like, most of them start at double.
Yeah.
That's just where you start. And like, sure, I'm half Arab, but I look non-Arab enough to Arabs, and I look non-European enough to Europeans, that they would always try and start as a tourist, until we could flip it around to be like, no, actually.
But starting at a tourist or as a local is just a threshold of how much haggling or like how high the price is. So even as a local, the price is still
high,
exaggerated.
right?
It's still high because they're expecting the haggling. And there's a like, for me it's a little bit exhausting. Like every time I want to buy something, like I wish I could just pop in and like buy this item in 5 minutes and leave. But then I go like, oh, I need to haggle for a good 20 minutes to get the thing I want. but there's an element of also of like the Arab culture we're talking about, the one-upping thing,
Right.
kind of like comes into this because everybody, as part of their conversation, is almost always like whenever they bought anything, they'll always tell you how much of a good bargain it was.
Yes. Yeah.
So they go because they go like, this thing. He asked me for $500, and you know how much I gave him? 5.
Right.
How good was I? And they don't probably made like 300% profit anyway on those
Yeah.
$5. Um, so like you're always like they're like, you got it for $5. Well, I like they tricked me. I bought
Right.
it for 6.
Right.
Like, and there's like an element of conversation happening about like how much of a good haggler you were.
Right.
Yeah, of course. That's a goal. Like the goal is to get a good deal.
Right.
What's interesting in the dynamic in my family growing up is my father couldn't be bothered with haggling. He didn't have the patience for it. My mom, oh my God, it's the other way around. Like here in like Montreal, she'd walk into a store with the prices that are on a thing and she'll haggle. And her success rate was like 50%, which is
Wow.
really high. And the tricks that she'd use like tricks like framing it like oh, so you expect me, this is last year's model, right? And this is in January, where last year was like a month ago. This is last year's model, right? You expect me to pay full price for last year's model? Like, look at this one is just $20 more. They're like, yeah, that's the most recent one. Yeah, so this should be half the price because it's last year's. I know you're just gonna throw it out in the back. It's like we don't throw out last year's model. Like, no, I know what you do. You're gonna throw it out at the end of the day. So just give it to me for half price. And she'd actually manage to knock off. Like she'd look
That's
at
great.
a thing that's not a blemish, like a scuff. Like someone kind of walked by and scuffed it. She's like, no, this is not good anymore. But it's okay. I could take it off your hand.
Right.
This it's shocking what she's able to do. I'll do you a favor. I'll take it off your head.
There's like another technique of going like and I've seen this happen like in so many Arab countries. They follow the same thing. You go into the shop and then you go like oh, this item that I'm not really interested in, I saw it like 5 shops ago,
Right.
the same one, but I'm tired of walking, so I guess I'll buy it from
Yeah.
you, but I'll give you half the price. The shop owner then like also is trying to act not interested, like, well, that price, why don't you go buy it from that other place? And then you go like, but you look like a nice guy. That's why I want to buy it from you. And then I think I'd be like, I'm a nice guy. You're a nice guy too. You know what? You can take it for free. And I was like, oh no, I can't. But I'll give you $5. $5? No, 95. And then you're back again.
And I mean,
to the same rigmarole.
Like to be fair, like I was always taught, like let them start with the price, right, and then just like undercut it as hard as you can, right? As hard as still, like it has to be borderline indecent, right? The amount of money,
like offensive.
Yeah, it's like, you need to get to the point where you can still look him in the eye without fighting, but it needs to be as close to that as possible. Right?
Like you're not gonna get punched,
right?
But he definitely thought about it.
Exactly. Basically, there you want to get exactly to that point, and then you bargain, but you don't start with the number if you can. Tricks, so many tricks. But it's just funny because again, like it was always so interesting to just go and negotiate a price down by like 70% and then give them 50% of the difference in a tip. And it's like, huh?
The thing is, Rami, is that the thing that I think most, like in Jordan, definitely, when you manage to trick someone into buying something more expensive than what it actually is, then you become a kharoof,
right?
Literally a sheep. They will call you a sheep. And there's like this inherent fear that's happening in everybody's mind at the same time. It's like, I don't care really about the money, but I don't want to be a sheep.
Right.
I don't want that guy to think that I'm a sheep. So then likely I'm gonna have to haggle.
Yeah.
Like this is about saving face here. It's not about the money.
That's it. It has nothing to do with money, the haggling. It's more of a like cultural requirement. Like you don't do it. It's just like, well, that's unfortunate for you.
Yeah, the last thing about was like, oh, there's this game developer sheep guy that came in and bought the thing for like twice the price. Oh, what a riot! And then him and the other shopkeepers like high-fiving on my behalf. No, I don't want that.
Do you also have the thing where sometimes if you go into a zoo or a bazaar or something, somebody sees that rich people walk in, some kids start running everywhere to tell everybody that rich people have
yeah.
we got a pack of sheep coming in.
yeah.
And their eyes, like all their eyes start like meet you. They stop whatever they were doing and they're just focused on
Assalamu alaikum, welcome, come in.
come.
Man, the haggling used to happen even with like, and it's kind of sad because you had those kids in those markets and stuff like that. They come from like really
Poor
poor
families,
areas.
right?
Yeah, and like I walk into that area sometimes. I go like, oh, this kid like they're selling gum or something like that, and I go like, all right, I want to give him some money.
Right.
So I go over and I give him the money, and then he starts haggling.
Right.
You go like, what? $5? Can't you give me 20? And I'm like, 7. And I'm haggling with the kid to give him the money for a 50-cent pack of gum.
But then also, you give the kid the money, and then the kid runs off, and then before you know it, there's 45 kids.
Yeah, 45
with you
kids,
about the money. It's fast. I mean, there's no good way of dealing with any of it because it's all all of it makes sense and all of it is fair. But I've definitely learned, like, if I needed to go somewhere fast, if I give one of those kids money, I'm never going to make it to the destination. I'm gonna randomly come across a lot of kids selling gum. And I'm like, kid, you're the 14th kid that is selling me gum. And he's like,
I can never consume this much gum.
My gum, sir, my gum is better and it's cheaper. What did you pay for the other gum?
You kind of have to buy the gum on the way back.
Right. It's so like it's such it's a function of necessity, right? It is absolutely. It is how money has to work there, because if everything had a set price, then it would never work for everybody, and we kind of want everybody to just have nice things. I think
it's a function of time too. People who don't have the time to haggle, they haggle less, and because of that, they pay more. And people who can't afford to pay more, they'll spend the time to bring the price down.
Right,
and it makes sense.
And I will admit, the shopkeepers in general are a really good judge of how much you can pay. Right, like that. Yeah, I think that's like a superpower. They can, if you don't have a lot of money and you go in and you haggle, they'll give in so much faster than if you look like a tourist with a Game Boy, just standing there and be like, "Can I get the camel?"
Yeah,
it's always the camel.
Yeah, it's always the camel.
You described me. That was me walking into the souk in Iraq. I'm paying premium for everything.
That's a Kharouf high five. Call the other shop corners. That's all high five all around.
That's it. You never actually knew. You could feel like you had the best negotiations ever, and you were never sure that at the end whether you got it or you didn't got it. Which, to me, that was always kind of the fun of it. It's just, how do you make sure? Do you have to make sure that you got a good deal?
It's like the ending of Inception with every purchase.
I would hate to buy that. I would hate to buy that little spinner top. You know what? If you wanted to buy that in a zoo, in a bazaar, you'd just be there, and it's like, how much it's worth, and the guy's just like, it never stops spinning. And you start spinning, you start spinning it, and then halfway through, he's like, no, you see, it never stops spinning. And you're like, no, let's keep watching. He's like, no, that's enough. If you want to see it spin more, you pay for it.
Well, speaking of endings, I think this is a good time to call. Otherwise, we'll keep spinning in this conversation, right?
I love the Osama segues. Osama segues are the best.
They just come out of nowhere, and then they're like...
They come out of nowhere. Speaking of endings, who spoke about endings?
The ending of Inception, the spinning top, come on.
That's the thing. It's always a good bridge. Like, you always listen to it. Like, in the edit, I'll listen to this bridge like 40 times, and I'll just be like, oh, that's good. That's good.
Yeah.
Okay, let me try it again. Speaking of listening, we don't only want our listeners to
What a
listen
pro.
to us.
What a
We would
pro.
love them also to chat with us. So how about all of you join us on our Discord? A few of you have already done it. We love the conversations there. Our Discord, you can find us at discord.thehabibis.com. Just come hang out with us. We always share really fun memes and jokes and
Food.
the
So
more
much
the
food.
merrier. Food. Oh,
So much
it's like 95% food, and that's not it.
It's just food Discord. It has nothing to do with video games or anything. Every now and then somebody mentions a video game, and most of the time it's like, "Oh, did you have this Lebanese food?" And like, no,
It's the best way to work up an appetite.
Right.
I go like, I'm not sure if I'm hungry or not. I look at the Discord and then I'm absolutely
hungry. Yeah.
That's it. So yeah, thank you for listening, and see you next week. I'm Osama Darius.
You are.
You are indeed.
You say I'm Rami Ismail, and I'm
that's how we open it. We end with salam.
Oh, yeah, that's true. Okay, we can cut that part out.
Okay. I mean, I might also not.
You never know.
Oh no, not this again. All right, thank you, and salam.
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 That was the Habibis podcast for this week. I'm Osama Dorias, your host for this episode. You can find me on Twitter at Osama Dorias. My fellow Habibis were Rami Ismail, you can find on Twitter at THA_Rami, and Fauzi Mesmar, who you can find on Twitter at Fauzi Mesmar. Send us your questions, stories, suggestions via info@thehabibis.com. Intro and outro music was provided by Malik Zubayla, and the logo was provided by Ibrahim Hamdi. The Habibis is a weekly podcast about 3 game developers drinking good Arab tea, with new episodes launching every Friday, inshallah. If you enjoyed the show, don't forget to subscribe on your favorite podcasting service, or check out thehabibis.com for more information. Thank you for listening, and Assalamu alaikum.